This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Find out more at the end of the video and find my promo discount link in the description. Hello, I'm back. I went on holiday, I had COVID, and I'm recording this in weird little bursts because I can't stop coughing. But here we are. We've just had two great Grand Prix in a row. After Silverstone, Austria was super good fun with interesting strategy, a little bit of heartbreak, some technical gremlins, and more track limit violations than you can shake a stick at. And I really can shake a stick at a lot of things. Also, it was a sprint weekend, but who cares about that? So let's start with all those track limits issues. Apparently, 43 lap times in all were deleted during the race alone, almost as many as F2 managed. The Red Bull Ring is one of those tracks that just seems to attract running wide. Turns 9 and 10 in particular are fast, crucial corners with tarmac all along the outside. The wider you can run the car, the faster a speed you can keep up right through that all-important pit straight. There's no physical deterrent, no wall or grass or gravel, just a curb and asphalt that really urges drivers to push as wide as they can get away with. And sometimes, that's too wide. It doesn't help that both corners are downhill, adding to the force that's already pulling them out wide. When a car corners, there's an overall outward force pulling the car away from the radius of the turn. The momentum of the car really wants it to keep going in its existing direction. Turning the wheel fights against this momentum, resulting in an overall force that takes it around the corner. Balancing these forces is how you steer your ideal line through the corner. So the fast, heavy car really wants to pull to the outside, fighting against the driver. So if you add in a little bit of gravity from the downward slope of the corner, this compounds the pull towards the outside, making it even trickier to wrestle the car inside those track limits. And to aside slightly, this is part of the reason we tend to get those incidents at turn 4, like Russell and Perez, where a car fighting on the outside gets punted off by a car on the inside. Turn 4 is at the bottom of a hill, so the approach is downhill. With heavy cars in early laps, it can be tricky for the car on the inside not to drift out wider than intended, as strong momentum from the car barreling downhill keeps it pushing on, resulting in the inside car boffing the car on the outside. We see this time and again. I mean, it's definitely still up to the car on the inside to anticipate and manage this, but it's often a tricky thing to balance in battle. Anyway, track limits. This year, the new race direction team under Niels Wittig and Eduardo Freitas have decided that for all tracks and all corners, the white lines will strictly define the track limits, and exceeding those limits could result in a penalty. Now, in previous years, only certain corners were monitored, and sometimes the limit was defined by the white line and sometimes by the edge of the curb. Sometimes track limits would change from Friday to Saturday. It was messy. Now, it's simple. So on the one hand, I welcome this consistency. The drivers, teams, stewards, and fans all know what the rules are at all times, so it's much easier to understand and police. One hard, fast rule. But when we had those 43 lap time deletions in the race alone and all manner of deleted times and penalties across the whole weekend, including Perez belatedly losing all of his Q3 laps and one of his Q2 laps, it did start to feel a little farcical. But is this a rule or stewarding problem, a track problem, or just a driver problem? So in my humble opinion, it's not really a rules issue. The track is the track, and it's defined very clearly by its edges, and as a driver, you are required to stay on track, or you've just plain failed to stay inside the area of competition. It's the same with football or tennis or any sport. You play within the lines. But what about the track? You know, if there was a gravel trap at the edge of the circuit at the problem corners, either a full field of gravel or just an apron, then you'd have far less issues, as drivers just wouldn't push the limits as hard. And if they did, they would be immediately punished for it. And we have plenty of evidence for that. Even at this track, look at turns 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Fast corners, gravel on the outside, we see almost no issues through this section. It's just too risky. Now, there's an argument that tracks don't really like putting too many gravel traps down in the riskier corners, as they are harder to maintain than just tarmac, and cars get stuck in them, which is annoying, especially on like amateur days. And also, there's a sentiment from F1's point of view, they don't want too many cars lost in the gravel, as they like having as many cars running as possible, and beached cars mean safety car periods, which slows the race down. And all of this, valid points. But really, we shouldn't have to put gravel or anything down. Drivers top flight $1 million F1 drivers should be able to drive within the lines, right? And it's not like they get penalised out of nowhere. In a race, they get 3 warnings before a penalty. 2 times they can exceed track limits with just a note from the race control. The 3rd gives them a warning. And only the 4th time they go beyond track limits gives them a 5-second penalty, which isn't massive as penalties go. And not to mention, by the time they get to qualifying or the race, they've usually had 3 hours of practice to get used to where the limits are. They're not going into this blind. And yes, I'm aware that things are a little bit different on sprint weekends like this, so maybe you can give them an extra bit of sympathy, but not much. The drivers argue to some degree they can't really see exactly where the lines are, but it has long been part of an F1 driver's skill to know exactly where their car is from the obscured bathtub-seated position they sit in. Visibility is lower than ever, but we still expect them to avoid grass, gravel, walls, and other cars. They should be able to figure this out. Again, use practice if you have to. And I'd say as a compromise, maybe draw a second line or a strip of colour 2 meters parallel to the outside of these problem corners to help them more easily visualise the margin, or put one of those little bollards there. But honestly, they really should be able to cope. The rules are the same everywhere we go now. At the driver's request, I should add. And if you're going to take a risk by pushing the limits of how wide you drive, that risk is potentially a penalty. If the tyres are going off, drive within your limits. If the car is heavy, adapt. One thing I would like to see to help us the viewers, maybe add a little graphic to the timing tower when people have time penalties they've yet to take. A little +5 or something so we can keep track of it all. That would be useful. Okay then, let's talk about Ferrari. Winning a race. On strategy, no less. What witchcraft is this? Despite letting Verstappen romp away with the sprint, Ferrari quite clearly had better pace than Red Bull on Sunday, feeling no need at all to cover Verstappen off when he pitted much earlier than expected. Pirelli's pre-race analysis suggested the fastest strategy for medium starters was to run for 24 to 32 laps before making a single stop to run hards for the rest of the race. After hassling him for a couple of laps, Leclerc passed Verstappen for the lead on lap 12, and a lap later Verstappen came in for hard tyres much earlier than Pirelli expected strategies. So it looked like Red Bull had switched him onto a 2-stop. But Ferrari felt little need to bring their drivers in to match. Normally this would make people worry for them, as strategy-wise, Red Bull have walked all over Ferrari this year, and Ferrari's overconfidence matched with somewhat less decisive action have left them on the back foot more than a couple of times. And on the new Haas, Verstappen reeled himself back into the net lead. Looking at the lap chart, you can see them matching each other for pace up until Max's stop. But when Max switched onto the new tyres, he's lapping up to half a second quicker than Charles until Ferrari pull him in for new tyres. Ferrari fans were begging the team to respond to Max's pace, but they genuinely had a longer game plan in mind. So they pitted Leclerc on lap 26, right in Pirelli's one-stop window, and immediately he was significantly faster than the Red Bull driver. He came out of the pits almost 7 seconds behind Verstappen, but closed the gap at over a second a lap and passed him easily on lap 33. Verstappen then came in for his second stop on lap 36, which would have run him to the end without a safety car intervention. Again, we see Verstappen able to run faster on new tyres than Leclerc can manage, by half a second. But at this point, Leclerc is 26 seconds ahead and doesn't really need to stop again. He does stop again though on lap 49 when Max is 19 seconds back, and this once again concedes the lead to Verstappen. But again we can see how much faster Leclerc is on fresh tyres, and he once again breezes past into the lead on lap 53. We then have a safety car and the leaders switch to new mediums for the remaining stint. Leclerc has some issues but hangs on to the lead. But importantly, let's look at those lap times again. For the bulk of this race, the two leaders are out of sync on strategy, so there are periods where one of them is on new tyres and making up ground on the other, on the used tyres. But look at how much faster Leclerc is during his new tyre phase than Verstappen is on his. It's night and day. Ferrari knew with such confidence that they had the pace today that they kept giving the lead back to Verstappen, knowing they could pass him on track. And that's rare. Normally track position is key, but Leclerc passed him 3 times on track. A monster drive. Red Bull suffered from greater tyre degradation than Ferrari, and Ferrari were able to hold on to their pace for longer while seemingly displaying more traction than Red Bull could manage. It was a great showing and hopefully one that can continue. And I say this as someone wanting that title battle to continue for as long as possible. I'm keen for Ferrari to close down that gap and make the championship less of a walkover. And we're halfway through already. Reliability did again show its head. The bad luck has swung back and forth a bit between Red Bull and Ferrari, but this weekend, Carlos Sainz blew up in a ball of fire, and Leclerc almost lost his win due to throttle issues. The problem was, when Leclerc lifted his foot off the accelerator pedal, the throttle was still acting as if it was about 30% depressed. Not only did this cause problems for slowing the car down predictably, but the gearbox was freaking out because in order to downshift the car, the gearbox system expects a low level of revs, but the throttle was still pushing revs through the engine. Really tricky stuff that involved Leclerc at some points trying to hoof the pedal up with his foot. The accelerator pedal on an F1 car isn't actually physically connected to the engine. It doesn't tug on a cable that opens and closes the throttle or anything. It's all by wire, meaning that it feathers an actuator that electronically controls the throttle. Not that that makes too much difference here, as Ferrari suspected a mechanical issue, but just a little info about the throttle pedal there. The brake works in the same way, physically disconnected, electronically controlled. And let's end by addressing the issues with the fans at the track this weekend. Due to some well-curated collecting of experience from those trackside, we got to see quite clearly into some of the horrible episodes some of the people were having at the circuit, with harassment and abuse, some verbal, some physical, and of course it was absolutely not on. Naturally, women and minorities were the overwhelming targets of this abuse, as they always are, and there are some important takeaways here. Firstly, this is not a surprising isolated incident. This is part of a wider endemic problem that needs to be stamped out. It happens at many circuits, at many events, it happens in the street, it happens at places of business, not just from Verstappen fans at Austria. It is everywhere. Just stop it. Leave people alone. Don't shout at them, leer at them, insult them, or catcall them, and definitely don't touch them. And maybe importantly, don't do it even if it's a joke, or if you're being light-hearted about it. These people are strangers. You don't know them. They don't know you. And also be aware, if you are a group of lads, even well-meaning, you can be genuinely intimidating, and even if you don't think you are. So make wherever you go a non-hostile environment, because it sucks. If you're at a sports event, if you're on the train. And if you're not one of those people, but you're a bystander, if you can, call it out. There are more of you than there are of them. Make sure they know it's not on and not acceptable. Protect vulnerable people. Provide safe spaces for people to sit with you if they need it. Though again, be aware, if you are a group of men, you can be intimidating. Try and alert staff and people who can help out if you're able to. I'm also aware that trackside staff aren't always great and aren't always able to deal with large groups of abusive people, but it's a place to start. In a more holistic sense though, F1 needs to work with track staff to tackle this as a problem. Throw people out, ban them if need be, flush it right out and make sure it's known to be completely unacceptable. F1 have been very good with words and slogans recently and very bad at action. But fans should feel safe and welcome at events, and we can all be part of that. Be a part of that. Thanks. Have you discovered today's sponsor, Brilliant, yet? Brilliant is a superb online platform for learning about and exploring topics across science, technology, engineering, and maths that goes a different route from just dry lectures and textbooks. Instead, Brilliant provides hands-on style learning with interactive tools and widgets and simple, digestible graphics to allow you to fully understand each concept, explore it, play with it, and test your knowledge so you really feel like you get what's going on. So you'll be introduced and reminded of concepts each step of the way and get to think and absorb ideas at your own pace. You might notice that a lot of the ways Brilliant presents its topics are similar to the way I have tried to do across this channel, thoroughly, clearly, but unrushed and broken down into steps which can be visually understood. And that's because I've seen how effective this kind of communication and education can be. And you can start at whatever level you feel most comfortable, starting on getting the fundamentals down and maybe working your way up to whatever you like, maybe some crunchy higher concept physics and mechanics, or you could stretch your legs following their data science courses. And you'll feel good about the progress you're making, at whatever pace you're moving at. To get started in empowering your own knowledge with Brilliant for free, visit brilliant.org/chainbear, which you can click right in my description. And the first 200 of you to click that link will be able to get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription too. So thanks, Brilliant.